We have a lot of folks in our state and really across the country. It impacts millions of individuals across the country when it relates to medical debt.
Today, we sit down with Senator Monique Limón to talk to her about a bill that will remove medical debt from credit reporting. She tells us why this bill is so important.
A woman that had a medical service done at a hospital, it was an emergency medical service, and thought that she had paid her hospital bill only to find out when she, years later, wanted to purchase a home and was trying to get a bank loan, that there was something on her credit report that was negative. And when she went back to look at that, she discovered that the debt that she thought she had paid had been reported to the credit agency because there had been an error in coding the debt. And so the insurance company only paid for part of it and didn't pay for the other part. Till this day, has not been reversed. And so this impacted her ability to get a loan.
We also talked to her about her role as a public servant and why she got into office.
Being a mother actually gives me really great insight and great perspective. And so those perspectives I share with millions of individuals in our state and across the country.
Over the next few months, we're going to sit down with a lot of public servants in California to understand them better. We face a lot of issues in California. We want to highlight the people that are working on these problems in California state. We hope you enjoy these profiles of service. I'm Siyamak. Welcome to California Insider. Monique, it's great to have you on. Welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
We want to talk to you about an important issue that you have done some legislative work on, medical debt. You guys are doing some legislation to actually remove the medical debt from the credit reporting. Can you tell us, first of all, how big is the medical debt issue for Californians?
Well, we have a lot of folks in our state and really across the country. It impacts millions of individuals across the country when it relates to medical debt. And medical debt is that which we all incur for having and using medical services. And oftentimes it is something that is reported to credit agencies. And so the work that we're doing with Senate Bill 1061 is we are ensuring that if this law passes and is signed by the governor, that we will not be reporting medical debt to credit agencies so that it's used against the individual on their credit score. The bill does not forgive medical debt. And that's really important to recognize, that this is just something that says there's not great value to reporting medical debt, which oftentimes is not elective, it's required or needed, and also at times can take quite a bit of time to sort it all out. And we have so many people that have examples of that as it relates to sorting out those debts, that debt, those charges with their insurance companies or with the medical provider themselves. One example that comes to mind is actually someone that came to Sacramento to testify in support of this bill. A woman that had a medical service done at a hospital. It was an emergency medical service, and thought that she had paid her hospital bill only to find out when she, years later, wanted to purchase a home and was trying to get a bank loan, that there was something on her credit report that was negative. And when she went back to look at that, she discovered that the debt that she thought she had paid had been reported to the credit agency because there had been an error in coding the debt. And so the insurance company only paid for part of it and didn't pay for the other part. All entities, the insurance company and the medical provider and the patient, all agreed that that was a mistake, but it, till this day, has not been reversed because that debt has already gone to the credit agency. And so this impacted her ability to get a loan. And that is something that really impacted her, and it's one of the many stories we hear about. And so for these reasons, we think it's really important to remove medical debt from credit reporting while still saying that the individual and the patient has to pay. It doesn't forgive the debt itself.
Now, is there a lot of mistakes like this?
These mistakes happen often enough that they impact individuals, and we hear about it on a regular basis. Just yesterday, I was at an event here in our community, and someone was telling me about how important that is, that the medical debt that oftentimes requires long periods of time to get sorted out doesn't automatically get reported to a credit agency because it has impacts on whether someone wants to get a loan. This reporting issue is a big issue for a lot of people, and we see it on a regular basis. We understand that so often people need a longer period of time to get that all sorted out before it gets reported to credit agencies. Once it's reported to credit agencies, to undo that, to fix it, to erase it, takes years for your average person. And so what we are trying to do is say, hey, we're going to skip that step of not reporting it to credit agencies because you use that credit to get a loan, to buy a home, to get, to be able to rent a place, to get a school loan, to get a credit card. All of those things are really important for people. And if that credit report reflects emergency services that were needed and that, are still going through a process of being sorted out, it will have a negative impact.
How long does it take for them to report it? Do they get reported right away?
So it is not done right away. It's in a matter of months, but oftentimes those months are still not enough time to sort out the pieces that need to be sorted out to ensure that the debt is paid, but also not used against them. I think that the bill is very important, and we know that it's not just California that's talking about the impact of medical debt on credit reporting. We have 7 other states, and at the national level, this is being discussed as well. And so we know that it has the ability to really help people and ensure that they're not harmed in a time of an emergency.
How did you get into politics and why?
Well, I oftentimes describe myself as an accidental politician. This isn't something that I knew that I wanted to do when I grew up, and certainly not in my early years of my professional career. I was someone who worked a lot with students and families. I spent 14 years working with students and families here in our community. And it's really that work that introduced me to the broader community work. I served on nonprofit boards before being in public office, and eventually in 2010, I got elected to the school board, and I thought that that was the only thing that I would get involved in as an educator, as someone who's worked with students and families. I had that connection. And today in 2024, I am a member of the California State Senate. So I think it's kind of progressed, but certainly not where I knew that I would end up. And a lot of the work that I do is inspired by my time and my experience working in our community, in the community that I represent, but also working directly with students and families. Many students and families go through so many different things and have so many different ideas and experiences and perspectives, and that influenced me to think about what it meant to help our students and families thrive. You see issues show up in the classroom. And so when you think about what it means as it relates to healthcare, environment, jobs, the economy, all of these things show up in the classroom one way or another, and really got me as an individual thinking, what else can I do to help students and families? And so I ran for school board.
Was there an event that sparked that? Was there a specific moment that you can recall?
Yeah, very often for so many educators, you get to know your students the longer you work with them, right? And so you know at times when something's not right. You've learned about the student, about their background, and you will find out through working with students that maybe mom or dad lost a job, maybe they're having difficulties at home, or maybe there's just impacts in the environment that are making them unhealthy. These things show up in the classroom, and I think a lot of educators all over the world really understand that and see that. And that is how, for me, I started thinking beyond what do I do to help students be successful in their college and career readiness, right? I started thinking like they have to also be successful outside of the classroom to be able to use all the tools that we give them in an education setting. So yes, many stories that I have of students, many faces that go through my mind as I recollect on sharing this experience with you.
And how about Now, being in this role,
the magnitude of the problem is greater. It's not just helping one family at a time. Now you're thinking more broadly. You're thinking across cities and county lines. You're thinking across neighborhood lines. And so there certainly is more complexity the bigger the problem is. And I think it is challenging, but I'm very grounded on the fact that what we try to do is to do the most good for the most amount of people. And I think that that's what we try to do, but recognizing that as a big state, as the fifth largest economy in the world, the problems are not simple. They're not usually solved in one bill. They're not usually solved in one moment or in 1 year. They're problems that we have to repeatedly work on. And even though we make incredible investments or even gains in a period of a year, if we don't do the work to ensure that those gains are sustained year after year, it still leaves challenges. And I think that sometimes we see that in all sectors, whether it's at the, private or public or big government or little government, it doesn't matter. We see these issues that need continuous investment.
Do you have a Northstar or something that's inspiring you to keep going?
Yeah, my Northstar has always been my community and family. I'm very, very grounded from that perspective of this has been an incredible opportunity to serve our community. And ultimately, the community has the say of whether or not you continue doing this work. But it's also important for me and grounding me that, the work that we do sometimes seems big, it seems complicated, but it has an impact on everyday folks. And I think that that's what I think about, and that's my North Star, the community that I represent and how the work that I do impacts our community. I am a member of this community, born and raised in the district that I now represent. I am a mother, a wife, a daughter, a sister, a cousin, a friend to many. And I think that that's not lost on me, that there's a deep sense of accountability to the community.
And how do your family members perceive you?
Well, I think for some folks, people were a little surprised, like, why would you want to go and pursue this role, right? I am the proud daughter of immigrant parents who came, to this country, and I am the first to go to college. I did my undergrad at Berkeley, my master's at Columbia. And so for a lot of folks, they were like, this is the American dream. And now you're leaving a good paying job, where you do great work. You have an immediate impact that you see on students and families. Why would you want to leave to do this work? And I really thought to myself that it's more about what we are able to do and deliver for our community. And so I thought that it was something that aligned with the work that I had been doing, but also we have shared community values of the things that we think are important. So I think you get all reactions. You get all at the same time, too. All reactions at the same time. Excitement, a moment of pause, a moment of reflection, a moment of surprise, and a moment of questioning from the people around you if this is it. I think in today's world, so much of the community sees very divided, right? Elected officials, bodies of governments. That's what tends to make the news. But what doesn't always make the news is, for example, in the 8 years that I've been in the legislature, over 90% of the bills that I have authored have had bipartisan support. We don't always uplift that, right? We don't always uplift the moments where we agree. I think of some of the work that we've done in the state around natural disasters and wildfire preparation. It has been done in a very bipartisan way, and I'm very proud of that. I think of the work that I've done as it relates to childcare in the state, and it's been done in a bipartisan way. The work that I've done around consumer protections, and when we wanted to make sure that we had limits on predatory lending and we stopped that, it was done in a bipartisan way. You had people from different parties picking up their microphone and speaking in support of this work. That doesn't always make the headlines on a regular basis, but it is a reality of what we also do here in the state, and I'm very proud of that.
When you were elected, how was the reactions?
When I was elected to the state legislature, my family was, overall excited, a little worried. I'm the first person in the family to be in a role like this that's very public. And so I think people really wondered what it was going to be like. I think I have an incredible amount of support in the family. They're helpful. As I think through, sometimes I will say that my own family experiences are what helped me think through some of the issues. We have very different backgrounds and ages differences and ideologies and politics ourselves. And so I think I bring that to the table. But the most important and I think beautiful thing about this is that with a big family come a lot of diverse perspectives, and including people who agree or don't agree with my own work. But we learn and we know how important it is to break bread together. That at the end of the day, despite our differences and our perspectives and our views on how things should get done in the state of California, we bake bread together and we are a family. And that to me is really meaningful and important.
So have you had cases where you have family members to criticize your policy when you're breaking bread with them?
I mean, absolutely. Sometimes my husband will be like, you voted on what? But it provides an opportunity to talk to someone, to help them understand why I vote the way that I vote. I vote on behalf of this district. And so oftentimes putting my own personal opinion aside, I think that my values are shared values with this district, but also understanding that we have to take difficult votes. And it's, very important for me to also recognize that, this is part of what happens, and that same reaction is a reaction we get with the public, but it is part of the job. I will definitely say it is more common than people think, where someone in your family will be like, help me understand what this issue is, or this is how I read it. And sometimes what happens is people read things or hear things, and that will be, in 30 seconds, they'll get their information on what we've been working on for 3 years. So sometimes we have to do the work of helping people understand that, a headline or a 30-second information bit from, a friend or a neighbor is not the full story of what we as a legislature have been working on for years or months. And so it's part of the job. It's very real, but we get better at, as individuals, as being able to kind of bring people to see, hey, here's the background information, here's more. And they may still not agree with us, but they better understand it.
In terms of your family, so you have a young daughter, right? How does all this help you, or is it challenging?
Well, I think that being a mother actually gives me really great insight and great perspective. There are millions of parents out there who wake up every day, go to work, do the best they can, come home, make sure, the child is taken care of, the child goes to school. And so those perspectives I share with millions of individuals in our state and across the country. But it's also, being aware that I'm one of 120 people in the state of California that's a California state legislator also is a unique experience. I have a very one-of-a-kind opportunity, but also challenge in front of me to be able to do this work. I think that we bring incredible perspective and insight to the job, but I also tell people, if you want to do it, you can. But I will tell you that it is challenging. It has its own challenges. I'm only the second woman in California history to have a newborn when, serving in the legislature, in the state Senate. In particular, in the state Senate. And so I think it's unique. It means that sometimes the systems and the practices and the behaviors and the traditions aren't always adapted to that. But we do our best. And I think that you're going to see more and more diversity in the state legislature, geographic, gender and background, and whether they're parents or not, all of that I think is changing in our California state legislature. But it is challenging. And I'm very proud of the work that I have done and know how much my work hasn't been enriched by my own perspective, my own family, and some of the own issues that I've gone through.
Can you explain some of the challenges you face and how you overcome them?
Yeah, well, I'm the first Latina to serve as a representative of Ventura and Santa Barbara County in the state Senate. So certainly being the first and oftentimes the only has its own challenges, but as do other pathways to get there. And so I definitely reflect on that. I think it has, many women talk about what it's like to run for office, to be the first, to be one of a few. And I have seen that change over time, but certainly there are its own challenges, whether it's the perspective, the background, the experience that you bring, and whether or not that is, one that is conducive to representing an area. And I would say that, hands down, it strongly is. That's why we see more and more women on both sides of the aisle getting elected to office.
And is it challenging to be the first Latina?
I think it has its opportunities, but I also feel
Has some challenges.
Being the first at anything we do. Being the first, broadcaster, journalist, right? In any space, has its own challenges. And oftentimes there are challenges that we can overcome, but it is a learning opportunity, not just for the individual, but for everybody else who hasn't seen someone with different experiences lead or work in that space. For some people that maybe weren't first in their family, to go to college, hearing the experience of being the first in my family to go to college might have been a little bit different or foreign because they weren't as familiar with it, right? Maybe for someone that, I went to, for example, a state preschool program. And so I have a lot to say about some of our state investments in early childhood in the 0 to 5 space. And maybe some people hadn't really thought about that. As we are given the opportunity, the work for us, if we are the first, is to make sure that others understand that perspective, but understand how that perspective enriches our policy making and helps us create better and stronger policies that advance all individuals.
Do you have a philosophy around serving the community?
Yeah, my philosophy as it relates to serving our community is really about, again, trying to do more good for the most amount of people. I think when you represent a Senate district in California with nearly 1 million individuals, you understand that a lot of the work we're going to do is, going to make some people happy, some people, upset, but you want to ensure that we serve, right? That at the end of the day, that we're able to translate the policy into that everyday experience for an individual.
And what about the others, the younger people that don't really care about politics? They don't want to get into it, but do you have any words to inspire them to serve?
Public policy is, I think, oftentimes comes from those that we elect to serve on our school boards, our water boards, our city councils, our counties, state, or at the federal level. And for folks who sometimes feel disheartened or disillusioned with, public policy making or politics altogether, these are still issues that impact all of our lives. And so I hope that they see an opportunity to be engaged. And that engagement looks different. It's sometimes running for office, but sometimes it's just reading and following up. Decisions are made on a regular basis that are political, even for folks who choose, right, not to engage in politics per se. I think, I oftentimes have folks reflect on their own experience of what it's like to be in a job and people having to make decisions and how hard those decisions are. But the fact that relationships matters and the fact that, when we make our own decisions, we also look for the pros and cons. All of this is embedded in politics. So I hope that folks will give it a chance, but also recognize that we are what we bring to politics.
And what about the service for younger people? Do you have any recommendation about serving the community?
I think serving the community looks very different for a lot of different people, and that's okay. I think serving our community is being engaged and just following what's happening, doing our own part, whether it's as professionals, as educators, as whatever you have it to be able to help our community. And sometimes that starts with us, sometimes it starts with our family, and sometimes it's giving back to the community.
Do you have any last message for Californians?
Well, I will say that I think, for folks that want to be more involved or want their voice heard in the public policy making process in California, they should always reach out to their legislators, no matter who they are. Those voices are accumulated into the thought process of why and how we do the work that we do.
Senator Monique Limón, it was great to have you on California Insider.
Great. Thank you so much.